What is something that in real life is far more horrific than the way it is depicted in movies? Getting stabbed. In my case, the blade was super sharp, so I didn't even feel it go in. 6. I sure as hell felt it come out. It doesn't bleed much unless it hits something or you're stabbed repeatedly. Either way, F that. I do not recommend. Sharp knives don't hurt going in, but it tears stuff as it goes out, and starts to bleed because there's nothing there holding the blood in. Which is why you should never remove something you are stabbed with if you have a choice. Having to pull the plug on someone's life support. No one tells you that it can take upwards of a week for the body to finally give up if there is even remotely any activity in the brainstem. In this case, there was minimal activity that was getting slower. So you think you have yourself prepped to let someone go. And instead you may have to watch their body wither and dehydrate before finally giving up. It's almost inhumane to watch. We wouldn't do that crap to pets. I can't believe that we do that to humans, to kids. I never want to have to go through that again, and I hope no one else has to experience it. We should absolutely be able to take a pill to die with dignity. I have never pulled someone off life support, but I watched my dad battle with pancreatic cancer for way longer than he should have. We all knew he wasn't going to get better, including him. My mom and I were just selfishly keeping him alive for as long as possible. He was either in horrible agony but awake or so drugged up on pain meds he didn't know what was happening at all times. We've both learned from that experience. No CPR, no life support, no white knuckle holding on. When it's time, just take that pill and go. My daughter was on life support for 2 weeks. We had tried a few days prior to remove the breathing tube to see if maybe she could breathe on her own. Her airway collapsed immediately due to her having zero muscle control, and she was retubed. They expected it to be quickish because of that. Within an hour or so of removing the life support. It took 7 days. 7 of watching an already small body deteriorate. If I know I'm dying, I'm going to go ahead and end my own life because I'm not putting people through having to watch it happen. This crap is why we need euthanasia. People say it's selfish to want to die, but the real selfishness is the fact that those living make people suffer so that they can have them around longer. If I was suffering in pain near death, I'd want to take the gentle way out rather than slowly wither away into nothingness. I'm so tired of people treating euthanasia and suicide as coward-lile fish, in the case of the terminally ill. Drowning is silent. There is no screaming for help. They just quickly and silently slip underwater after a few moments of having hair in their face and kicking frantically. Yep, I've nearly drowned, myself. What was more terrifying was that nobody, including the lifeguards at the pool, knew anything had occurred. This happened to me as a kid. The pool I was in was deeper than the one I was used to, and I must have accidentally drifted a bit too far towards the deep end. All of a sudden, I couldn't touch the floor. I panicked, and started taking water in. I tried my best to wave down the nearby lifeguard, but they walked away, so they probably didn't recognize what was happening. I could barely keep my head above water, which meant I couldn't scream. Every time I opened my mouth to try to breathe, scream, anything, I just took in water. Thankfully, a nearby swimmer grabbed me and pulled me to the shallow end. She saved my life that day. Suicide by taking in a whole bottle of pills. I was a lot younger, 13 I think, so I don't remember it that clearly. I was at my friend's house when I heard a lot of banging upstairs. When I went up, I saw him clawing at his throat, choking and wheezing. I called for an ambulance, but because of traffic they couldn't make it in time. We were the only people in his house too, and I think I blanked out a lot, but it stretched out for like 8 minutes. Closest neighbors were also absent. Eventually, he started puking a lot, and he was turning blue fast. His convulsions only slowed down about 2 minutes before he died. I think it depends on what drugs you take, since some are stronger and such, but he wasn't lying on the floor with a clean face, a peaceful expression, and an empty bottle of pills near his body. I've heard this from someone, that taking pills can be a very painful way to die, and often they end up ringing for help before they die as the pain is unbearable, definitely not the peaceful passing you often see in films. I think this depends largely on the pills you take. Death. I work in palliative care, and when I watch movies when a patient has a little headscarf on, pale, and they are saying goodbye, and then they flatline is completely off. In real life, you deteriorate until you are bedbound, there's pain, you shrivel until you are a skeleton, you sleep so much until you don't wake up again, and then you remain that way for a few days/weeks. Then you get the death rattle. Your lungs sound like a wet crackle. Then the family will be visiting for that long time until one time they notice that their loved one has stopped breathing. Or there is no family there and I realize they are not breathing. Or the roll of death. Staff will roll to change the person, and when they are rolled back onto their back they stop breathing. It's not pretty like the movies. Add on, one example, in movies everyone cries over the dead body and it's a beautiful moment, but I had one patient that had a stomach blockage, and she only ate green jello for weeks. When moment she passed aloft the jello came back up and covered her head to toe. It was so traumatic for the husband and small kids to witness. We quickly went in, cleaned her up and brought the family back in. But I will never forget that family. I had to have one of my cats put down, and went to a local vet that was very sensitive about such things. They had a nice sitting room with comforting lighting and a couch that you could sit on with your pet while they administered the injection. They gave her the shot, and she died, and I was overwrought and tried to pick her up and hold her. And her relaxed bowels poured diarrhea all over me. I won't say it was traumatic, but it certainly sobered me up. Hitting someone in the head to make them unconscious. The act would more likely cause brain damage or death. Movies and TV use it like a damn pause button. Yeah, concussion is no joke. All the people I know who have had one have still had to deal with the effects months, or years, later. I listen to a few true crime podcasts and there's this one dude I can't remember the name who tried to kidnap women by hitting them on the head, but he quickly changed tactic as he was killing them instead. Well, ain't that considerate of the boy? Batman doesn't kill people. If you're rendered unconscious for a prolonged period of time from a blow to the head, congratulations, you probably have brain damage. Mr. Bond. You're awake. Half an hour later, in my lair. Please step into this MRI to make sure you can currently comprehend my evil plan properly. No? Okay, we'll revisit this after a couple weeks of supervised recuperation. Your occupational therapist will be along shortly. Family arguments. Actually, there is one scene in the movie Sinister where the parents argue, and holy crap, it's so uncomfortable and intense because it feels like I'm actually in the room with them. Don't forget about the Hereditary dinner scene though, especially considering the context, it's brutal to watch. Jumping/falling through windows/glass. In movies people do this pretty casually as a cool stunt. In reality, glass shards are incredibly sharp, and by smashing through it with your body you are causing large heavy shards of it to drop down on you like a damn guillotine. The larger the window the worse it will be. I was at a party where a guy jumped through a first floor window onto grass once. He'd been drinking and thought it would look cool, and he did not get back up. He rolled around in agony while people tried to patch him up until the ambulance arrived. I always picture him every time someone just casually leaps or is thrown through a window in movies, and imagine the whole film stopping while the hero just rolls around screaming and bleeding out. Edit: I am sure some people have been fortunate enough to achieve this without significant injury, but the odds are not in your favor, unless you found some sugar glass. CPR. Original poster replies. Breaking ribs is never fun. The cracks and pops of snapping ribs, the huff sound of forced air movement, panting as you get tired of compression sand need to switch, and, if you're lucky, the frightened gasp of someone taking a breath mid-compression. I've been in healthcare for almost 20 years, and nothing turns my stomach like the cracks and pops during CPR. Car crashes. The sound of gunfire at close range. When someone shoots a large caliber gun in the same room or in a car, if you don't have hearing protection, you'll be unable to hear for a while and the damage could be permanent. Movies get this wrong all the time. Mop. Mop. This might not be horrifying to the extent of others' comments, but overhead welding without long sleeves effing sucks. Movies are always showing someone welding with bad butt ripped sleeves and tight jeans. It literally burns you with the sparks, or molten filler metal can drip down on you. Sometimes you catch on fire, and then there's the getting sunburned from the light it makes. Don't get me started on the fumes that cause neurological problems in later years. Next time you see a welder, ask them to show you their scars. We all have good ones with stories. I know for all of mine I was wearing the right clothes and equipment and still have burns that turned into scars. Edit. I forgot the HD bacon sound paired with burning flesh smell that happens when it gets inside your ears. Apparently getting metal splinters in your eyeballs is also a thing. No sir, I don't like it. Saved them a trip to the hospital. My brother is a machinist. He can never get an MRI because the metal fragments he picks up would rip out of his skin and damage the machine. A severe asthma attack. Being fully conscious while not being able to get over 10% of the oxygen you usually do is very, very scary. It's strange, you can feel every individual part of your body struggle as you're unable to breathe, and the pain in your lungs feels like a stab wound. And my God, never look in a mirror during an asthma attack, you never want to see yourself struggle to survive. Work. It only lasts a few scenes in movies. And when they are there, they can leave any time, and the boss or whoever just happily covers for them. And they don't even bother clocking out. Strangling someone. I watched something that reenacted how long it takes someone to die of asphyxiation. You got to be effed up to be able to look someone in the eyes for that long while killing them. And the effects of chloroform. It takes quite a bit longer to render someone unconscious via inhalation than is depicted in movies and on TV. It really depends on your technique. If you're squeezing their windpipe, it will definitely take a few minutes, but if you're doing a proper blood choke and actually squeezing the arteries in the neck, you can put somebody out in seconds. You'd have to keep holding while they were unconscious to kill them, but you don't have to look into their eyes. Death, animal and human. Movies and shows make it tame and almost graceful. I've only seen one death like that. Every other has smells and sounds that still haunt me to this day. Agonal breathing is so difficult to listen to. They assured us that it wasn't causing my grandma any pain, but it sounded so painful. Yep, I watched my poor grandma die, and her breaths were hard to watch. She was in hospice care though, so I like to believe she was full of happy, comforting drugs that made the experience not painful for her. Snapping someone's neck. No, it won't instantly kill you. It'll be horrifically painful, and the person will most likely survive, albeit crippled. Torture. Half the time in movies they just get punched a few times, but if you have ever seen people who have been tortured talk about it, it's much worse. A resistance fighter in World War II had his balls crushed, and an Australian criminal Chopper Red would catch drug dealers, forcing them to tell him where their money was, and if they didn't, he would cut toes off with a bolt cutter or blow touch the bottom of their feet. Alzheimer's. No matter how it's portrayed in movies, there is nothing more horrific than seeing someone's mental capacity degrade and turn into a completely different person. War. Long periods of intense boredom with a few moments of chaos. Bullying. Domestic violence. Overdosing. Finding somebody dead. Grief. Being alone. Sometimes you don't heal. Cancer. It sucks the lifeblood from not only the one who has it, but all loved ones around them. Mental health problems. I'm sick of 13 Reasons Why and other shows like it, depicting it like it's some romantic tragedy. No, this crap effing sucks. Being medicated and going to regular therapy just to feel emotions at all is draining on the mind and the wallet. Ptsd. I can't express how frustrating it is to see that the people we've grown up seeing in books and movies experience horrible things and then be 100% fine afterwards. It happens that people are fine after trauma, but sometimes they aren't, and people rarely ever see that. Seeing a dead person in the daylight. The skin changes so quickly. Digging the hole and burying something or someone you love by yourself. After burying a dog, I feel for those who have had to bury a loved one. For one thing, the body is bloated and stiff and smelly and oozing. For another, you're heartbroken while burying this stiff, smelly, bloated, oozing body you love. Original poster replies. Shotguns. Unfortunately, I found out they don't just fall over, they kind of explode into mice meat. Going to have to go with childbirth. I'm convinced the only reason any woman has more than one kid is because their mind somehow blocks out the memories of labor and childbirth. I like to call it milky. Had 2 kids, each does get hazy. I can tell you that it hurt, C-section for the first, unmedicated for the second, but I would swear it wasn't unbearable and that I could easily do it again. My husband is like, "Are you sure that's how it was?" The hormones are no joke in making it fuzzy or blurring it for a good chunk of women. Gunshot wounds. In the movies, people just jump back up and keep on going like nothing happened. In real life, there is typically a lot of screaming, if they're still conscious, puking, broken bones, limb paralysis, and even wetting oiling of pants. For anything other than a simple flesh wound, it's not pretty. My dad was shot during a home invasion and his adrenaline allowed him to run for a few minutes after the shooter and tackle him, then he fell to the ground, couldn't get back up, and laid there in silence. Not like the movies at all, but also wasn't like how you described. It was terrifying. One thing I can say that is wrong about the movies is how the blood always pours out. My dad had no blood on him at all. Just internal. Seeing people get shot in movies now makes all of us squirm at how unrealistic it is. Edit, my bad. I know people do bleed like they do in movies, but not all bullet wounds bleed, which the movie standard of all them bleed is unrealistic in my opinion. I also was not trying to discredit original poster, I know my experience was unique. Edit 2, I would also like to add that the shock and adrenaline subdued the pain of getting shot and he didn't even feel it. He's also alive still. Making a phone call. Rape. Hangings. In movies, it's just 2 seconds wriggling. In real life, it's minutes of torture and strangling and choking and jerking. This is absolutely true. I walked in on my husband hanging himself. I managed to get to him and get his head out of the rope, but it was one of the more terrifying things I've ever seen. He survived and is much better after a good hospital stay. Thank you for watching. Please subscribe to be the first to know about Red Rabbit Reader's new videos. If you like our videos, please like them on YouTube and share them with your friends. We welcome your comments below. Press to start another of our videos.